Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2016. Yeah, woo, yeah, that's a good thing, that's a good thing. Some of you weren't sure you were going to make it to 2016, right? So that's a really good thing. How many of you made New Year's resolutions this year? Can I see your hands? Quite a few of you. How many didn't make New Year's resolutions because you think you're stupid, but actually you just want to keep the bar real low? Anybody else out there? Yeah, all right. Now, I'm guessing those of you that made some New Year's resolutions, some of you have already broken them. Or what you did was said, you know what, I'm going to start Monday, right? Because that's how it kind of works with resolutions, right? You know, you kind of go, hey, start it, well, not right now. I'll start my diet tomorrow, you know? It just kind of works that way. And, you know, New Year's resolutions are kind of part of what, at least in America, is about a new year, a fresh start. Pastor Ann talked about that, prayed about that, you know, one of the great things is just this chance to begin again, to begin fresh, new, kind of have that fresh start. And today we're going to celebrate communion together because communion is really all about that, and that's what it's really about, this fresh start. This fresh start because of what Jesus has done for us, that Jesus had died for us, that he came back to life for us, that even right now, we're told that he intercedes, that he prays. That the prayer as he begins the day and the prayer that he ends the day, every day, is for you. And because of that, we can celebrate that. That it's about a fresh start. It's about always hope. It's not always about our failures, but it's about his promise. And so, you know, kind of the New Year's resolution, as you think about it this year, you think about a new year, and normally a resolution is all about a better version of me, right? If any of you have belonged to like a health club, a gym of some kind, and are a regular attender there, you will notice for the next 2 weeks, it will be incredibly crowded. But just hold in there, figure out your timing, because in a couple of weeks, everything's open again. You can go back about your business, because that's about how long it takes for people to get anxious, you know, go pay their money, buy a whole year, or get locked into a monthly payment, and then off they go, you know. At churches, they tell us, you know, start of the year, people want to sort of change the direction of their life, and so people will start to come to church. And if you're here today, first time back into church, you know, in a long time, we're glad you're here. Actually, we're glad for a couple of things. One is we're glad you're here. Secondly, you showed up today, and the roof didn't cave in, no lightning bolts came down. That's good news for you, and it's also good news for us, because it would have been bad news for all of us, right? So welcome. We're glad you're here today. What you think about, you know, kind of spiritually? Actually, I just heard this week that also something I never heard before. Vitamin stores have their largest sales of the year in January. I don't know if that's just simply an American thing, you know, I want to feel better, so I'm going to go buy some pills, and that'll really change my life, you know, or what, but it's just kind of interesting. But you think about it, so much is all about a better version of me, and it's really this question: what should I do about me? Need to change my look, you know? Need to lose weight, need to get in shape, need to get my resume, you know, lined up, need to get my relationship, take that more seriously. You know, we have all these kinds of things, and all the New Year's resolutions tend to focus on what should I do about me. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the reality is, some of you really need to get your act together. True? I'm not lying, am I right? Yeah, don't just look at somebody else, you know. Don't elbow the person next to you. I must be honest. There's always things that we can do to improve ourselves. And so often, though, as we begin a year, we think about this: what should I do about me? But I want us to begin this year asking a different question. What I think is a more important question, a more valuable question, and that's this. Because here's the reality, and here I'm going to kind of cut to the chase of what we're going to talk about today as we begin this brand new series called Semicolon. This idea that English teachers will tell us, you know, a person uses a semicolon instead of a period because they don't want to finish the sentence yet. There's still more to come, but for a moment, they're taking a pause. And so as we begin this year, we're going to take a pause. Stop and look at life, look at its challenges, look at its direction. But as we begin this year, here's the thought: what needs to be done in me? And here's the bottom line today: if you want to become a better person, do something to make the world a better place. And that's actually very consistent with what Jesus said. So often he talked about becoming a servant. You know, the first ought to be last. You know, You ever hold the door open to a big crowd of people? You know, you go to a big event, sporting event, concert, you know, you hold the door open for one person, and then another person comes. Does the thought ever go through your mind like it does mine? When can I actually go in? Anybody else out there with me, you know? It's like, oh, man. And then finally somebody else will step up and say, I'll take that. And you go, phew, you know, because I can't find my family anymore. You know, everybody's gone on. They got the good seats, you know. But it's an idea of making a better place. And here's the reality. While you may not change the world, you can change somebody's world. Because the reality, here's what I know about you, because it's true for all of us. The people you admire most, the people you tell your kids to look up to, the people that really have made such a huge difference in your life, the people that when you stop and you read a biography about them, or if there's an article in a magazine, you'll buy that magazine because you want to read about them. What I know about that person is you are not inspired because that person has kept their ideal weight their whole life. Right? You are not inspired while you're somewhat inspired. You're not completely inspired by somebody who had a $15,000 credit card debt and paid it off. That's an amazing thing. And for some of us, we need to get better, take better care of our bodies. We need to take better care of our bank accounts. We need to take better care of our relationships. We need to take better care of ourselves. But the people that inspire you the most, the people that you tell your kids to look up to, are the people who have left this world a better place because they've been here. And some of those people in your life are people that nobody else in this room has ever heard of. But for you, they changed your world. I mean, let's be honest. There are very few people in this room today, or watching us online, wherever you're watching us, welcome, glad you're here with us. But there's very few of us, if we're honest, who are going to change the world dramatically. I'm hoping there's some of you. I know some of you are really smart. Some of you are pretty wealthy. Some of you got some great minds. But while we may not be able to change the world as a whole dramatically, we can, individually and collectively, make this world a better place for somebody. And that's part of the message that we're going to look at as we lead into communion. Actually, it's part of the whole story of communion that we find in the Bible. But before we kind of jump in there today, we're going to find ourselves over in Luke chapter 22. But before we jump there, I want to invite us just to pray one more time together, okay? Let's pray. Lord, as we begin this year together, we come from lots of experiences over the last few days, couple of weeks of Christmas and New Year's and seeing family, seeing friends, either enjoying ourselves at celebrations and parties or working our tails off because we were on call or we were on shift. But I simply want to echo again the words of my brother Jason this morning, that I would just pray for me, that your voice really would be the loudest in my life, that your voice would be the clearest. And Father, I pray that it would be the strongest in my life this year. Because I can't speak for anybody else in this room, but I know that I need to hear from you. And I need to be clear that it's from you. And I need to respond to that. And so I just pray that you would help me, that you would always continue to draw me and to guide me. And just to speak louder at those moments when I'm either unclear or I'm ignoring you. And so today, as we pause to begin this year, as we take a breath, I just ask again that you would speak to us clearly, loudly, and strongly now. To your Son's glory. Amen. Luke chapter 22. Luke is one of what we call four Gospels, four stories about Jesus' life in what we call the New Testament part of our Bible. And we have four accounts, not an account of Jesus' life, but four different accounts. We talked about this last week. 4 different accounts, and I think we have 4 different accounts for a reason. People see things differently. People, remember different pieces, and that's why we have these 4 different accounts, because they're all really different. In fact, John is the most different from the other 3. We have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew and Mark are kind of first-hand accounts or very close to first-hand accounts. Luke is a guy who says, I took it on myself to kind of go and write out a story, to gather the information, to talk to people, to track down the leads, and come up with a story about what Jesus' life was about here. So we're going to look at Luke's version this morning. And the scene here, and if you've been around church very much, you are familiar with the idea of communion. If you're not, Christian communion is tied into Jewish is one of its big celebrations out of the year called Passover, which celebrates, has celebrated for thousands of years, this miraculous thing that God does when they are back in Egypt. When they keep saying, Moses has this great thing. If you've seen Charlton Heston, if not, Easter's coming, watch Charlton Heston. Charlton Heston has this great line, let my people go, right? And Pharaoh says, no. And he says, let my go. And he says, no, let my people go. No, it's a great dramatic scene, much more dramatic than I could paint it right at this moment. Finally, comes that night, and God finally says, this is how we're going to get him to say yes, just for a moment, to let my people go. And so God says, I'm going to come over this land. I'm going to kill the firstborn of everything. Firstborn of humans, firstborn of animals. I mean, it's just going to be a terrible scene. But he says to this small group, or actually not very small, a large group, but his people, this group of Jewish folks there, here's how you protect yourself. You get a lamb, you go in your house, you cook it, you eat it, you take the blood from the lamb, you smear it on the doorpost, and you stay inside, because when the angels come through, you need to be staying there, and I will pass over. That's where the term comes from. And so for thousands of years, they have celebrated that. And then when Jesus comes to this, it's been a long time, they have celebrated this. And Jesus says, I really desire it, because he knows for him, this is the last one he will ever celebrate on this planet until he returns. And if you read some of the stories, some of the accounts will say, he would even say that. But I really wanted to do this, guys. I really want to have this chance to be together, because Jesus has been preparing them, especially the last few weeks. And he's been very clear with them by saying, I'm going to Jerusalem, and I'm going to die. To which they say, come on, Jesus, you can't be serious. Where's your courage, Jesus? Get your act together. Jesus keeps getting really strong and stronger and stronger. So he gets that night. They sit down. They go through the feast. And Luke chapter 22 picks us up somewhere in there. They're celebrating Passover when Jesus makes this change that is literally a change of that Passover celebration to a brand new celebration that we call communion or the Lord's Supper. And here's what it begins. It says after the supper, they've had their meal. They've had their lamb. They've had all the bitter herbs. They've gone through all the different parts of the Passover feast that remind them of what God has done for them. And it says after the supper, Jesus, took it to the cup, and it's one of the cups that they drink. They drink this glass of wine about 4 or 5 times during the Passover celebration. So it's one of the later ones. He takes the cup, and he looks at this group of guys, and he says this cup is the new covenant in my blood, and it's poured out for you. To which all the guys go, ooh, Jesus is getting kind of dark right at the moment, right? I mean, this is a serious weight. This is really symbolizing something more. My blood's going to be poured out for you. And then Jesus uses this word that I heard described years ago as the biggest little word in all of the English language. Right? And some of us have seen big butts in our life, right? Stick with me for a second. We've had big butts. Your boss says, you did a good job in this project, but, and that's not a good but, right? Somebody says, I really like you, but, you've been, glad you put this extra effort in and sealed the deal, but, buts always mean, and when you hear a but in your life, you forget everything that's gone before it, right? And if you've gone to managerial training, they'll tell you to, give 3 positives before you give them the negative, right? Before you make that butt turn. But every time you make that butt turn, everything gets forgotten, right? Because when somebody says, hey, Caesar, you're a great guy, but it's not going to be good for Caesar, right? And so when Jesus says this word, all the guys pick up on this because Jesus kind of gotten low, and he says, this cup, it's symbolizing something. It's symbolizing my blood that's going to be poured out. But the hand of him who is going to betray me is with mine on the table. Jesus holds this cup, and then he looks at the guys. And he's literally saying, one of you is going to do me wrong. The Son of Man will go, just as has been decreed. Jesus says that this is going to happen. And it's not surprising to me. This is kind of how, I just know the plan. This is how it's going to work out. But then he says, but woe to the man who betrays me. And all of us in this room have had a woe moment at some time in our lives, right? Where you go, whoa. I mean, it's a bad woe. I'm going to do a little self-disclosure. I'm a huge fan of a TV program called Ridiculousness. Anybody like Ridiculousness out there? All right. If you don't want to go watch it, there's some parts I kind of skip over. But it's one of these shows, Caesar. It's one of these shows where they show clips of people doing really stupid stuff. And I love it because, for me, it's a great argument against those who believe in evolution. Because evolution believes, only the strongest survive. If you watch this, you think, there is no possible reason why humanity should survive with people this stupid in this planet, right? I mean, they just do some really crazy stuff, right? But there's these moments. The reason I mention there's these moments when you watch the stuff, and every time anybody who's in a room sees it, they go, whoa, because it's just so bad. I mean, it's like, how'd that happen? How'd that person escape terrible injury? I mean, guys walking down the road, a semi-truck comes sideways, goes over the top of them, and they're still walking, and on the other side, it's like, whoa. It's one of those whoa moments. I mean, it's a bad thing. It's like a whoa, this catches. And Jesus says, woe to that person because it's going to be bad for them. But one of you is going to be it. You're here at the table with me. And it says, Luke, as he gathers this story, as he relates it, says that they begin to question among themselves which of them it might be who would do this. Matthew and Mark will say something like this to Jesus. Surely not I. Or a better translation is, it's not me, is it, Jesus? But I love how Luke gets the story as he talks to people who were there. Because it's more than just them simply looking at Jesus and saying, it's not me, right? Give me some kind of sign. It's not me, right? But it says they begin to ask a question among themselves, which of them would be the one who would do this? And at times all of us have been in situations like that, right? We're around a table and something comes up and somebody messed up and everybody begins to look around and figure out who it is. Some of you have been in those situations where everybody points at the same guy because he is always, I'm sure in this situation everybody points at Peter, right? Because Peter's the logical guy, right? Because Peter's always talking big and always kind of failing big as well. So they begin to question who it is that would do this terrible, terrible thing. I mean, nobody wants to be this guy. The room has gotten strangely silent. It's gotten tense. And they begin to look at each other, trying to figure out who it is that Jesus is talking about. But then Luke tells us a piece of the story that none of the other authors captures. And he says, also, as they're looking around the room, a dispute arose among them as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. Now, excuse me. In the original language here, where it says dispute, this one sort of just kind of came up. The language there literally says they were looking for a fight. They were ready to contend. And if you've ever been put in a spot, somebody's questioning your integrity, your morality, your ethics, you begin to figure out, okay, I gotta get the attention off me and I gotta get it on somebody else, right? So they were ready. As soon as this came up, then it became, hey, I'm the closest to Jesus, I'm gonna sit on his right, on his left. No. And they had this argument, and I'm sure Peter tried to always remind them, hey, I'm one of the three that's always hanging around with Jesus. The rest of you guys, you're just occasional followers. Me, James and John are always there, and it begins this contention. In fact, this idea of greatest is simply the word we're familiar with, this idea of mega. It's about who's the biggest in the room. And we've all been around rooms where somebody wants to be the biggest, right? I mean, and it starts early for us. It starts on playgrounds very early, right? I mean, I remember as a 5th and 6th grade, being out playing some kind of games, and there was always this kind of thing of who could beat up who. Any of you other guys, the girls I don't think do this. Guys, how many of you guys remember who could beat up who? Anybody else remember that? Right? Yeah, And so you had to kind of figure out your pecking order. There's always one kid you knew could beat up everybody, and he went down the order, and you tried to figure out where you filled in there, and there was always one kid at the other end, right? You know, he was the sickly little kid. You felt bad for him, but you were glad he was around because if he wasn't there, you might be in last place, you know? And so here's the scene, and they're going around. I mean, they go quickly from this whole, you know, it's not me, Jesus. It can't really be me, Jesus, to, okay, you know, hey, I'm better than you, and you know, well, you know, maybe John's really close, but hey, I'm always there, you know, all this kind of stuff goes on. And begin this process of trying to get the attention off themselves. And here's the reality of it. Blame is how we avoid changing things. And they are great at blaming at this moment. Because they're saying, it's not me, it's got to be you, and let me tell you why it's you, and it can't be me. And so they're trying to get distance. And we see that all the time, right? I mean, we live in the D.C. area. It is a constant here, right? One party blames the other party, right? You know, president blames the Congress blames the president. And for some of us, that blame continues in others. You know, at work, you forgot nobody wants to get the blame, you know. I'm always amazed how that works. You know, somebody breaks something, and they just leave it, you know. They walk away like nothing happened, you know. But this whole blame thing goes on. And people who blame things don't change things. And that's one of the dangers of kind of buying that blame. That's one of the great things about starting off a new year. New Year is not about blaming anybody. It's about just taking responsibility and making some changes. Because if you blame and you say, well, you know, my parents hadn't coddled me when I was a kid, you know, I'd be a much better person. If my parents hadn't said, finish everything on your plate so you can have dessert, right? I wouldn't weigh as much. And we have all this stuff we like to blame. And I think if you read much about Jesus, you know that he doesn't care much about the blame. But he's really all about the change. And a person not changing just on their own, but a person changing in response to Jesus' call on their lives. Because I want you to notice what Jesus says next to this group. Again, scene, he said, one of you is going to betray me. They all go, no, it can't be me. Who is it? Start questioning each other. Turns to this big fight about who's the greatest, who's the biggest, who's the most important. And then Jesus says, listen, guys, the kings of the Gentiles, the rulers of the Gentiles, lord it over them. And we all know what that means. Those in power enjoy their power. And those who exercise authority call themselves benefactors, because when you're in power, you want to feel good about your power. So you have names for yourselves. A bunch of peons. If it wasn't for me, it'd be really bad. You know? But it's good that I'm here, so I'm going to take care of you. So they feel good about it. And if you're getting a little bit of a break, you don't feel too bad about it because you're getting a little bit of a break. But Jesus says that's how it kind of works in this world. But he says, you are not to be like that. Now, I don't know about you. When I read this week, I thought to myself, but Jesus, that seems like exactly what they're doing, isn't it? I mean, they're fighting among themselves. They're fighting among a group of 12 guys. Who's the greatest out of the 12? But Jesus says that's not what you're to be like. We have to go against that pull, that flow, that kind of humanity thing that kind of gets us going that way. Then he asks this question. Who's greater? Who's greater, the guy, the person who serves the table, or the one who's sitting at the table being served? And I love what Jesus does here. He asked them a question to help them out because, again, if you know much about the disciples, every time Jesus asks a question, they have learned you don't want to answer too quickly because you don't want to look stupid. Because oftentimes Jesus asks this and they'll go, this one, oh no, you know, it's like, finally, you know, there are points when they'll go talk to Jesus privately and say, Jesus, we have no clue what you've been talking about today, but we didn't want to say anything publicly because we're your guys, we got your back, so help us out, right? I mean, this is a constant thing with the group. So when he gets here, Jesus says, who's the greater out of these two? And he says, I'll give you a little hint. Isn't it the one who is at the table? And they all say, yeah, I'm trying to help you out again here as well. You guys got the whole experience right now, right? That's who it is. It's the one who's sitting there. It's the one who's eating all the food, not the one who's bringing all the food. And then Jesus makes this incredible statement. But me, the Messiah, the Savior, the hope of the world, am among you. I'm here as one who serves. Just think about that for a second. He's literally saying, as God, I came to this planet and I could have sat at a table. I should have sat at the table. I'm the one who deserves to be served. But I came here to serve you. I came to make you greater. I came to make your life better. And if you want to become a better you, you make someone else's world a better place. And that's exactly what Jesus is talking about there. I'm not the one sitting and enjoying it all. I'm the one who's slaving in the kitchen. I'm the one who's bringing the food out. I'm the one who's cleaning up the mess when you get done because your kids have spread it all over the flipping place and somebody's got to clean it up. But I came to serve because Jesus knew that to become a better you for all of us would take us helping somebody else's world become a better place. And then Jesus says this incredible statement. Now I want you to get again. These are guys who have, Jesus will say in this story, as you look at the whole account, he's going to say to some of them, listen guys, all of you are going to let me down. All of you are going to betray me. Not just the one whose hand is at the table, but actually all of you guys, to which you remember Peter goes, not me, Jesus, and everybody else goes, not us, Jesus, and Jesus goes, yes, every one of you. In fact, Peter, let me help you out. Rooster's going to crow a couple of times, and when you hear him crow the second or third time, whatever count you listen to, you're going to be thinking, oh, he was exactly right. So it's to this group of betrayers, not just a single betrayer among the 12, but to a 12-numbered group of betrayers, that Jesus says this. You are those who have stood by me in my trials. Which had to make them feel good, especially knowing that Jesus says you're going to not do that in just a few moments. But you have stood by my trials. And I confer on you a kingdom. Just like this is my Father has conferred one on me. I'm giving to you what my Father has given to me, so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom and sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And sometimes we get all caught up, they're going to be judges. And that's not the picture he's trying to point out here. He's saying that's going to happen. But his point to this group of people, he knows is going to let him down in just a matter of hours. He says, I still believe in you. There is still a place for you. Because it isn't going to be about the momentary failures. It's going to be about the course of your life. Because the reality is nobody hits 100% all the time. I mean, you think of it, those of you who know sports know this real well. If you're a baseball player and you hit a ball 4 out of 10 times and get on base, you are considered the greatest ever, right? If you do that over the course of time, 40% of the time you're successful, you're considered the best to ever play the game. To which I think, man, I would have loved to have that curve when I was in school, right? Because I could have been one of the greatest ever at 40%, you know? Well, at least most classes, I would have been right up there, you know? I mean, basketball, the shooting percentage, the best ever, I think, was in the right around 70%. And happened to be a really tall guy. Guy was about 7'2". The distance of most of his shots was from 2 feet away. It's pretty hard to miss 2 feet away when you're this far below the basket, you know? But nobody outside of, the highest two are 2 centers. Everybody else is way below them. Football, if you want an interesting thing, go look up completions in a career. You will never guess who's number one. I can't even guess right now because I forgot, but I saw it this week. But you would never guess who's number one. He would not make your list of he would not make your list of top 20 quarterbacks all time. In fact, the top 5 will shock you, because only one of them would you consider a really good quarterback. Because over the course of a career, and they have statistics of how many passes you got to throw, how long you got to play, but I think it was something like 65%. And that's exactly what Jesus is thinking about when he makes this statement. See, we get too trapped sometimes into thinking I have to hit it perfectly every time, and if I don't make it, I am a failure. When we are surrounded by stories that tell us that is not true. We're surrounded by sports figures, if you like sports, by people that you would look up to and admire who are failures the majority of their lives, at least baseball players. And the other ones are still failures a significant portion of the time, 30 to 40%. Why is it that we forget the lessons of people around us? Because not everybody closes the deal at your firm. Not everybody makes the sale. Not everybody always adds everything perfectly right. Not everybody remembers how many checks they've written this month. But why is it that when we're not perfect, we see ourselves as perfect failures? See, the new year's upon us, but so is an old fear. And here's the fear that's going to rattle around. If it hasn't happened already, and I hope it hasn't, because we're only on January 2nd right now, right? But if it has, but sometime over the next few weeks, if not few weeks, a couple of months, this old fear is going to pop up. And some of you began this year kind of this way. It's too late, I've already ruined that relationship. I've already, messed up too much at the job. Maybe it's you've missed your chance. The fear will pop up as it will take too long. It's too hard. The ship has sailed. There's no hope. Or maybe this final one. Why bother? And that fear is going to rattle around. It's an old fear, even though it's a new year. Here's a quote I saw this week. I love it. The doubt parade has no cheering crowds, but it does have plenty of words, right? And the reality with that doubt parade, it starts earlier than we think. And for some of us, it is the most persistent voice we hear. And every day there's that parade. Not with cheering crowds, but with those words. Why bother? It's too late. Too old, too young. So here's my thought to you. When you don't seem to be becoming the person you want to be, remember, it's only too late if you're dead. And if you're not, you still have time, and there still is hope.